No human being has ever watched the fight. It happens a mile down, in water with no light at all, between the largest toothed predator on Earth and the largest invertebrate. We have no footage. We have no witnesses. What we have is skin. Nearly all adult male sperm whales carry it. White, circular rings, some small as coins, some wide as saucers, stamped across the head and jaw and back. These aren't birthmarks. They aren't parasites. They are sucker marks, healed receipts from arms and tentacles that wrapped around the whale in total darkness and refused to let go. Scientists have pulled squid beaks the size of fists from whale stomachs. They have measured scars that point towards squids of serious dimensions. And in 2007, when a New Zealand fishing crew hauled a colossal squid out of the Ross Sea, a squid that had been actively feeding on a hooked toothfish on their longline and wouldn't release even as men dragged it toward the surface, they finally held the animal that makes them. We are going to read the archive written on the whale's body, because until someone films the battle, the scars are the only footage we have. To read that archive, we first need to understand the animal that carries it, not as a character, but as a machine. Physeter macrocephalus, the sperm whale. Adult males typically reach 16 to 18 meters in length and weigh up to around 50 tons, making them the largest tooth predator on Earth by a considerable margin. The head alone occupies nearly a third of that length. Inside it sits the spermaceti organ, a complex of structures that generates the most powerful biological sounds ever measured. Guinness World Records put sperm whale clicks at 236 decibels, referenced underwater, where sound propagates differently than in air, but even accounting for the conversion, the output lands in the range of naval sonar at close quarters. Every click propagates through hundreds of meters of open ocean. Those clicks aren't communication. They are the primary instrument of hunting. During a foraging dive, the whale produces a steady sequence of regular clicks at half-second to 2-second intervals, a scanning mode sweeping the water column ahead for returning echoes. When something solid is in front of it, the pattern changes. What Peter Miller, Mark Johnson, and Peter Tyack documented in their 2004 study using digital acoustic tags on 23 sperm whales was a shift into what they called creaks, rapid-fire click bursts where the inter-click interval compresses dramatically, analogous to the terminal buzzes that bats and dolphins produce in the final milliseconds before prey capture. In their dataset, 99.8% of all creaks occurred in the deepest half of each dive. 57% occurred in the deepest 15% of the descent. The hunt intensifies as the whale goes deeper, and it goes very deep. Tag studies across multiple populations have produced fairly consistent results. Watwood and colleagues' 2006 work with digital tags recorded typical maximum foraging depths of 644 to 985 meters across regional groups, with dives lasting around 40 to 50 minutes. Research off the Ogasawara Islands recorded a mean maximum depth of 793 meters per complete dive, with a single dive record of 1,354 meters in that dataset. The widely cited upper bound for sperm whale depth, around 2,250 meters, appears consistently in secondary reviews, though researchers working directly with tag data tend to anchor their confirmed figures in the 1,400 to 1,900 meter range. The verified depth record for any air-breathing animal, around 3,000 meters, belongs to Cuvier's beaked whales, a separate species entirely, a distinction that tends to get blurred in popular coverage. Measured descent rates in studies off Japan run at around 2 meters per second, roughly 400 feet per minute. No spiraling, no detour, straight down, clicking the whole way. When the echolocation system detects prey at maximum depth, the creak sequence begins. What happens in those final seconds is something no camera has ever captured. The acoustic record confirms that a capture attempt happened. It can't name what was caught. Two animals can put permanent marks on a sperm whale from below. Understanding which one left which mark starts with understanding what each one carries. If you watch the previous video on why colossal squids appear to be terrified of sperm whales, you already have the broad biology. We're going to focus here on weapons specifically, because two different squid species leave two different types of evidence on the whale's body, and distinguishing them is the core forensic problem. The giant squid, Acoustic ducks, is cosmopolitan. North Atlantic, Southern Ocean, North Pacific, wherever sperm whales forage at depth. Acoustic has 8 arms and 2 longer feeding tentacles, and the suckers on both are lined with sharp, finely serrated rings of chitin. These toothed sucker rings grip, compress, and bite into whatever surface they contact. In 2012, modeling work published in Current Biology concluded that giant squid eyes, which in large adults measure up to 27 centimeters in diameter, appear to have evolved primarily to detect the bioluminescent wake of approaching sperm whales at distances exceeding 120 meters in near total darkness, rather than to identify prey. The giant squid can apparently see the whale coming. The sucker rings are already waiting. The colossal squid, Acoustic hamiltoni, is a different machine. Circumpolar, confined to Antarctic and subantarctic waters, it overlaps directly with the territory where adult male sperm whales make their deepest dives. Tipapa Tongarewa's anatomical documentation describes the tentacle clubs as bearing 2 rows of swiveling hooks, mounted on a pivot point designed to impale and rotate, tearing into whatever they grip. The arms carry a combination of fixed hooks and suckers. Where Acoustic grips and saws through serrated chitin rings, Acoustic impales and anchors. One species leaves a stamp, the other leaves a wound. Rosa and colleagues' 2017 review of colossal squid biology in Polar Biology states directly that the species' eyes, measured on the 2007 Ross Sea specimen at around 27 centimeters in diameter, roughly the size of a soccer ball, seem to have evolved to detect very large predators, e.g. sperm whales, rather than to detect prey at long distances. Both squid species have independently built their sensory systems around the same predator. They carry different weapons. They leave different marks. Rosa and Zeibel's 2010 metabolic study calculated the colossal squid's mass-specific routine metabolic rate at 1.5 degrees Celsius as roughly 63% lower than the metabolic scaling rule for aquatic ectotherms of equivalent size. The modeling based on this calculation has produced popularized estimates of extremely low daily food requirements, though the specific figures are derived calculations from the metabolic model, not directly measured intake data. What the study firmly supports is the picture of an animal optimized for stillness and patience in cold, deep water, which is precisely the thermal environment that sperm whale foraging reaches during the deepest fraction of each dive. Colossal squid sink deeper as they mature. Juveniles appear from the surface to roughly 500 meters. Adults reach 1,000 to 2,000 meters. Sperm whale foraging dives reach exactly that zone. The encounter is structurally inevitable. Several viewers asked after the previous video, could you show us the scars on its back? What do they actually look like? Here is what they look like. Against dark grey or brown sperm whale skin, healed squid origin marks appear as white or unpigmented patches that contrast sharply with the surrounding tissue. The Smithsonian Ocean Portal describes the pattern precisely. Circular scars from giant squid suckers on sperm whale skin, with older whales so densely marked that individual scars overlap and blur into each other. The marks concentrate around the head and jaw, the contact points during prey capture, though they appear across the flanks and back as well. The numbers from stranding records give concrete calibration. A Tasmanian study found that white, star-shaped squid-derived marks on the head region were present in 66% of the 25 animals examined. A study from Australian coastal strandings measured average scar diameters at around 40 to 50 millimeters. The Irish whale and dolphin group has documented individual sucker-type scars on sperm whale heads reaching up to roughly 13 centimeters in diameter. L. Harrison Matthews, examining sperm whales for his 1938 monograph, concluded that nearly all adult male sperm whales he studied bore scars attributed to large squids. Circular marks up to approximately 10 centimeters across, and linear scratch marks extending 2 to 3 meters along the body. A marine educator quoted in Live Science coverage of an Australian beaching described sucker marks of up to about 10 centimeters on the animal's side. These aren't subtle marks. On a dark-skinned animal, white circular rings of that diameter are visible from a considerable distance. Older and larger males carry them so densely that individual marks are difficult to count separately. Why do the scars stay white? The mechanism in cetaceans generally involves the suppression of melanocytes, the pigment-producing cells, in healed scar tissue. Research on cookie-cutter shark wounds in related cetacean species has identified elevated expression of a melanocyte inhibitor called DKK1 in the dermal fibroblasts surrounding depigmented scars. The skin appears to actively prevent its own pigment cells from repopulating the damaged area, rather than simply losing them once and leaving a permanent gap. The deeper and more severe the original injury, the more permanent the white mark. This specific mechanism hasn't been directly confirmed for squid sucker wounds on sperm whale skin. That histological study hasn't been done, but the broader cetacean wound healing literature points toward the same basic process across the family. Now, the forensic complications, and they are significant. Cookie-cutter sharks, Isistius brasiliensis, are small, squaliform sharks that take circular bites from large marine animals throughout warm oceanic waters worldwide. Their wounds are crater-like, approximately 5 centimeters across and 7 centimeters deep, with tissue physically removed in a plug. Best and colleagues documented in a 2016 PLOS-1 study that most crater-like wounds on large whales examined off South Africa are attributable to cookie-cutter sharks rather than squid. Sperm whales in that study carried between 0 and 17 unhealed cookie-cutter bite marks per animal, with a mean of 1 to 2. Those wounds, once healed and flattened over years, can produce pale, shallow circular scars that superficially resemble older squid sucker impressions when examined without careful measurement. The diagnostic distinction comes down to depth and tissue loss. A fresh cookie-cutter bite has a scalloped edge and a missing plug of flesh. A squid sucker impression compresses and abrades the skin surface without removing tissue. In recently healed wounds, the difference is unambiguous under examination. In old, heavily healed scar tissue, careful measurement and context, the whale's range, its dive depths, the distribution pattern of marks across the body, become necessary for confident attribution. Intraspecific combat leaves a third category of mark. Cato's 1984 study in the Scientific Reports of the Whales Research Institute systematically documented that tooth rake scars, parallel linear marks spaced according to the dental interval of other male sperm whales, increase in number and severity with body length and concentrate on the head and jaw. These are morphologically distinct from circular sucker impressions, but a heavily scarred older animal carries all three categories overlaid on each other, and separating them demands methodical examination. The deepest forensic challenge is attribution between squid species. The two-weapon distinction, Architeuthis leaving circular sucker stamps, Mesonicoteuthis leaving hook punctures and slash patterns, is conceptually grounded in genuine anatomical differences and is a sound interpretive framework. No published forensic protocol, however, reliably distinguishes giant squid sucker ring scars from colossal squid hook wounds based on scarring alone in real-world conditions. Scientists typically triangulate: scar morphology, combined with stomach beak content, combined with the whale's geographic range, combined with its known foraging depths. We can read the weapon category from the scar. We can't always name the species that held it. This is what the archive demands: calibrated reading, not overconfident identification. The first people who tried to read this archive didn't have any of those tools. In 1898, Frank Bullen, a British merchant sailor, published a memoir called The Cruise of the Cachalot. It contained what became one of the most quoted historical accounts of a surface encounter. A very large sperm whale was locked in deadly conflict with a cuttlefish or squid almost as large as himself, whose interminable tentacles seemed to enlace. Bullen described tentacle fragments with suckers he compared to saucers edged with sharp hooks. The scene was observed at night from the ship's deck. Precise measurement was impossible, and the scale of everything observed in darkness tends to grow in memory. Modern cephalopod reviews consistently note that extreme size claims in accounts like Bullen's are likely exaggerated. More carefully documented is an event from 15th August 1903 at a whaling station at Mjófjord on the east coast of Iceland. A giant squid tentacle fragment was found lodged in a captured sperm whale's mouth, with squid beaks present in the stomach. The whale's head bore parallel stripe-like marks, each approximately 27 millimeters across, roughly an inch, interpreted as sucker scars and documented by Murray and Hjort in 1912. It remains one of the earliest rigorously connected observations, directly linking visible marks on a whale body to physical squid remains recovered from the same individual in the same examination. 19th-century naturalists treated such evidence, squid fragments in mouths, beaks in stomachs, white rings on skin, as indirect proof that giant squid existed at all, decades before any living specimen was filmed or studied intact. They were right to do so. What they got wrong was scale. Whalers attempting to estimate squid size from sucker scar diameter were making a logical-seeming error. A large scar, they reasoned, must mean a large sucker. But scars expand as the whale grows. A mark left by a modest squid on a young whale becomes a much larger scar on the same animal decades later. Modern cephalopod experts have established that scar diameter is an unreliable proxy for original sucker dimension. Historical claims of dinner plate-sized sucker marks almost certainly reflect this growth distortion rather than actual squid suckers of that size. The archive can be misread, and for most of recorded history, it systematically was. If the skin is the war record, the stomach is the body count. Squid beaks are composed of a highly sclerotized chitin protein composite material that resists digestive enzymes entirely. Muscle, mantle, skin, everything else dissolves. The beak persists. Sperm whales have a 4-chambered stomach, and the second chamber is where undigested beaks accumulate in numbers that take a moment to process. Malcolm R. Clark, the British cephalopod biologist whose 1980 Discovery Reports monograph established the foundational methodology for identifying squid species from predator stomach contents, documented recoveries of over 18,000 beaks from a single sperm whale stomach. A 2020 Mediterranean study by Foskolos and colleagues recovered approximately 13,000 lower beaks from a single 5.4-meter calf stranded off Mykonos. One animal, one stomach. A southern Australian dietary analysis of 36 sperm whales produced 101,883 beaks total, representing 48 squid species. Most of those beaks come from small to medium mesopelagic squids, the everyday inventory, the unremarkable tonnage of deep ocean foraging. In Clark's Azores analysis, from one whale stomach containing roughly 10,000 beaks, representing around 5,000 squid, 3 beaks belong to giant squid, numerically rare, anatomically unmistakable. The large iconic squids make up a tiny fraction of what fills the archive numerically, but a disproportionate fraction of what leaves marks on the carrier. The methodology for using beaks as evidence is called lower rostral length analysis, LRL for short. The rostral region of the lower beak is measured in millimeters, and allometric equations established by Clark and subsequent workers convert that measurement into an estimated mantle length and body mass for the original squid. It's a direct read of size from a durable, indigestible object. Tepapa calls recovered colossal squid beaks a treasure trove of information, precisely for this reason. Each one tells you the animal's approximate size, even when everything else dissolved in the whale's stomach acids years ago. The Guardian's 2008 reporting on the Te Papa examination noted that the largest colossal squid beak recovered to that point had a lower rostral length of 49 millimeters. The 2007 Ross Sea specimen's own beak was measured during examination on 30th of April 2008. That the largest colossal squid beak recovered from a whale's stomach exceeds the 2007 specimen's own measurement has one implication. A larger colossal squid than any directly measured specimen has already been consumed by a sperm whale. The whale surfaced. The squid became a beak in a database. The encounter left nothing else. The caveat matters. Beak-based size extrapolation produces ranges, not exact answers, and those ranges widen considerably at the upper end of the size distribution, where specimens are rarest and calibration data thinnest. Maximum size estimates for both giant squid and colossal squid derived from beak measurements remain contested among cephalopod researchers. The archive tells us something large was here. It doesn't always specify exactly how large. There is a third object the archive produces, and it's perhaps the strangest. Ambergris, a grey, waxy substance found either inside sperm whales or washed up on beaches worldwide, has been one of the most prized natural materials in the history of perfumery. It has been an ingredient in luxury fragrances for centuries. Most people who have worn it had no idea where it came from. R. Clarke's 2006 paper on ambergris formation describes the mechanism. Squid beaks, indigestible, accumulating in the second stomach chamber, occasionally migrate into the intestine, where they partially obstruct the flow of liquid feces. The rectum responds by precipitating fecal material around the blockage, building up in layers over extended periods, transformed by bacterial action in the rectal environment into a low-density, waxy mass. Eventually, the rectum stretches and ruptures. The ambergris is released into the sea. It isn't a sign of disease, it's a structural response to an accumulation of prey that won't dissolve. Jetsam ambergris found on beaches sometimes contains squid beak fragments embedded within it. Ambergris is, at its most fundamental level, a sperm whale's intestinal response to an excess of indigestible prey. Prey evidence petrified by chemistry and time, washed ashore, traded, and pressed into perfume bottles across 5 centuries. Its commercial value and its scientific meaning have almost nothing to do with each other. There is a fourth instrument for reading the archive, and unlike the skin and the stomach, it operates in real time. Since the early 2000s, marine biologists have attached digital acoustic tags, D-tags, to diving sperm whales, recording depth, orientation, and sound production across full foraging dives. The portrait that emerged is the most detailed account of the hunt from the predator's perspective that exists. The whale descends, clicking. As it reaches the productive foraging depth, the zone where the fighting happens, the regular click series becomes increasingly punctuated by creaks. Miller and colleagues' 2004 analysis showed that the deepest 15% of each dive produces 57% of all creaks, and that the bottom phase of the dive is characterized by a mean of 12.5 depth inflections per dive. Active maneuvering, tracking a target that is moving. The whale is working hardest where it's deepest. A 2016 study in Scientific Reports by Face and colleagues addressed the hypothesis that sperm whales stun their prey acoustically before capture. Tag data and experimental results both showed no evidence for it. The whale pursues and closes through active chase and buzzing, not through acoustic weapon deployment. The prey, whatever its size and species, responds by moving. The whale closes. The creak sequence fires. What the acoustic record can't do is see through the water. The clicks confirm that a capture attempt happened at a specific depth. They don't identify the prey. They can't record whether the encounter involved a squid large enough to grip back. Prey identity, species, size, whether it was Architeuthis or Mesonicoteuthis or something smaller, must come from independent lines of evidence. Stomach contents, scar morphology, the whale's geographic range and known dive profile. The acoustic record gives us the timeline. The skin gives us the evidence of what pushed back hard enough to leave marks. In February 2007, the crew of the New Zealand longline vessel San Aspiring, fishing for Antarctic toothfish in the Ross Sea, hauled their line and found something gripping one of their hooked fish that wasn't a fish. The squid had a tentacular hold on the toothfish and wouldn't let go. Not as the line came up, not as the crew pulled it toward the surface. They stopped fishing and preserved the animal as intact as possible, froze it aboard and transported it to New Zealand. The Museum of New Zealand, Te Papa Tongarewa, took custody of the specimen. On 28th of April 2008, scientists began thawing it. The examination completed on 30th of April yielded the most complete dataset ever gathered on a large adult colossal squid. Mass approximately 495 kilograms, eyes approximately 27 centimeters in diameter, tentacle clubs bearing the characteristic swiveling hooks of Mesonicoteuthis hamiltoni, beak lower rostral length approximately 42.5 millimeters. An earlier Ross Sea specimen, an immature female, examined by New Zealand cephalopod expert Steve O'Shea after its recovery in 2003, had a mantle length of 2.5 meters and weighed approximately 300 kilograms. The 2007 San Aspiring specimen surpassed it in mass. Both fell within the range of what sperm whale stomach contents had long suggested existed, but neither is necessarily near the upper bound. The 49-millimeter beak recovered from a whale stomach, larger than the 2007 specimen's own, implies a colossal squid of greater size was already eaten, digested, and reduced to a single chitin structure in a laboratory drawer. In April 2025, a colossal squid was filmed alive in the deep ocean for the first time, confirmed by National Geographic, more than a century after the species was first described from beak fragments recovered in whale stomachs. The animal on film was small and young. The ones that make the scars are bigger, older, and have never appeared on film at all. The framing of the previous video, that colossal squids appear to be terrified of sperm whales, was accurate. The sperm whale wins this encounter at population scale. It's larger, faster over distance, equipped with the most powerful biological sonar in the ocean, and it hunts these squids systematically across decades of its life. The archive in the stomach confirms this. Thousands of beaks per animal, accumulated over a lifetime of successful dives. But the skin tells a different part of the story. No fish does this to a sperm whale. No smaller squid species leaves this kind of record at this density and permanence. The marks that accumulate over a lifetime of deep foraging, the white rings that cover mature males in every ocean, come specifically from encounters with animals large enough, powerful enough, and resistant enough to grab the whale during the struggle. Scar density increases with age. The more dives a male completes into colossal squid territory, the more entries accumulate in the archive. Matthew's 1938 finding that nearly all adult male sperm whales he examined bore squid origin scars represents a population-level conclusion across decades of observation. The 66% prevalence in the Tasmanian stranding study reflects the same pattern in a smaller, geographically specific sample. Among fully mature males, the deepest divers, the ones that spend the most time in the zone where Mesonicoteuthis lives, the archive approaches universality. Every scar on a living whale is evidence that on some particular dive, the animal at the other end of the creek sequence had the grip strength and the will to fight. The whale won. It surfaced. It breathes. It dives again. The squid left a record that the whale will carry for the rest of its life. We can read the weapon type from the pattern of marks. We can't name with certainty which species held each weapon. We can't know the duration of any single encounter, or the number of attempts before success, or how many dives ended with both animals escaping before either could fully claim the outcome. What the archive tells us, taken together, is that the deep ocean contains encounters that are genuinely bilateral. The predator descends armed with sound. The prey waits armed with hooks and eyes that evolved specifically to see the predator coming. One of them usually wins the same way, but the winner carries the record. No camera has reached the arena. No scientist has watched a single round. But the evidence surfaces every single day, riding on the back of the winner, stamped in white rings that never fully fade. Somewhere tonight, a sperm whale is falling through the dark at around 400 feet per minute, clicking into the black at 236 decibels, and something with dinner plate eyes is watching it come. Those eyes evolved not to find food, but to detect this whale. One of them will eat, both of them will remember, and the only record of what happens next will be written where it has always been written, on the skin of the whale, in the one archive the deep ocean allows us to read.